So, what has motivated you? Because certainly there are more sighted people around you than there are non-sighted people. So, how have you each kept yourselves motivated, moving forward, convinced that you could overcome?
Well, for me, early on, it was my parents instilled in me the value of working hard, and I thought it was important to work hard. I didn't know what I could achieve, but I knew that working hard was part of it, and so I learned to push through. Um, the biggest motivator for me has been meeting blind people in the National Federation of the Blind and learning that we can push the limits of independence, and that I could learn from other people and what they have done, and I could take that to the next level, and they could help me do that, and I could help them do that, and in that process also help myself stay motivated to push to bigger places. So much of what we experience in the world are people limiting us based on their misconceptions about what blindness is or is not. And so I know a primary motivator for me has been my blind friends who have, through their own example, taught me that the limits aren't where people think they are, and we still haven't figured out yet where the limits are. And that is really exciting to keep pushing that horizon, and that's a motivator for me.
For me, I guess it's similar and it's different. My parents were definitely a huge part of my motivation. There was really never a question that I would go to college or that I would work hard, I guess. I mean, it was kind of the same thing. I did chores at home. I had two older brothers, and of course my older sister who's also blind, and my brothers can see, and my parents just never outwardly treated us much differently than our brothers. We were expected to do chores just like they were, and we were expected to do our schoolwork, and we were expected to go to college, and my parents made it pretty clear from young on, not really in these words, but basically, look, we're going to do what we can do. We're going to raise you, we're going to support you, we're going to love you, but we want you gone someday. We don't want you to be living with us when you're 30 years old. We want you out in the world. We want you in college. We want you to do whatever it is that you want to do that will make you happy. And so that was certainly a big motivator early on. Now, certainly there were some mixed messages that came along with that. Yes, we want you to go to college. Well, maybe you shouldn't be crossing this really busy street with your cane because you can't see the cars. Yes, we want you to do chores, but maybe you shouldn't do such and such. I don't know what it is. So it was a little bit mixed, certainly to a certain extent. And being a parent now, I sort of understand that a little bit better, just because you do want your children to be safe. You want to give them freedom, but then you give them some freedom, and then you think, oh, is that really the best thing to do? Is that really a good idea? I think public school was also a big motivator for me. I was always surrounded by sighted kids. There wasn't another blind child in my class. There was never another totally blind child in my class. There was one other totally blind person in my school that I knew. She was a couple of years younger, and she was born premature and had a host of other very serious cognitive issues. Then when I was in 4th grade, there was a girl that moved into my class, and we went all the way up through high school together, but she was legally blind. She had no vision in one eye, but she had 2200 acuity in the other eye, and sort of like what Mark was saying, she never really thought of herself as blind. And, of course, the message was, she was, but she wasn't, because she would walk with me down the hall and lead me places. So I never had another blind person, and in fact, when I did have contact with other blind people at camps and things in the summer, oftentimes they were people that were so overprotected or that had other things going on in their lives, disability-wise, other disabilities. So I often kind of looked down on them and thought, oh, I'm better than they are, or I can do more than they can. And so it was kind of a motivator not to be like them. Like, I don't want to be one of those weird blind people. I want to be a normal person. And then, of course, once I got into college, I knew I had a career goal, so that helped, and I knew I always wanted to have a family and things like that. But I knew all those things in my head. I wasn't so sure sometimes in my heart if all of those things were possible. Would people really give me a job? Would any guy ever find me attractive? Would I ever be able to be a mom? Would it be too hard to have a baby as a blind person, or to have a toddler or a teenager as a blind person? And so that's really where, for me, the National Federation of the Blind came into play, and I started realizing that that blind people are a cross-section of society, that often those blind people that I sort of looked down on when I was younger just never had the opportunities that I had, and that there were tons of other blind people that were doing more exciting things than I'd ever thought of doing, or that were doing the things that I wanted to do. There were blind parents, there were blind counselors, there were blind social workers, there were blind, blind teachers and lawyers, and so it could be done. And so that certainly is a motivator, and it's a motivator for me also to give back, to help people realize that blindness can be merely a characteristic, and that it's important to give to others, since I've had a lot of things given to me.